Pour harvests from every vine and vein. Persephone makes an announcement from her undead home. This rising moon, the transference of mystery of every form is processed. This rising moon, the Princess of Cups, in the most primal sense, must effect a modification by the effect of emotion unto what is best. What we witness is not hallucinations, but the undead communication provoking deeper discipline. In the metal box directs the offerings. Like sleep, the rites reach a state of abandon. We have shut ourselves to those merely living under the sun. Certain entities have gone beyond titles to transfer by what remains. The dreadful transference of a moraine by her craftiness, play, and stillness are both of which she is virtually unknown. With each energy, sound, and color, she takes up the sigil of the covenant of Drakon and feeds by projection, flayed from the wavering and degeneration. The auric field is torn in the victims. Tradition tells us of the change that happens towards others becoming morenas. The Siofra is either favored or reviled as a vehicle of superstition. With a skill beyond their body, they affect others and have personal communication. Distinguish between donors and prey in your experimentation. As you do between means and ends in a sense of violation. Combine the experience with specific vibrations. Societies will become unrecognizable, but our rising power towards death will live in our kingdom for all eternity. We have been shaped by the outsiders to what we are upon, and will use their systems towards what we have chosen. We will not move our attention from what we have summoned. A descent in and with the dark is needed for this transformation. Some are trained for willing succession from one who has become dark and ready to translate into their undead kingdom. The veils to the causal are lifted in the ascending centers, open for possession. G, B, D, R, P, K, K, A. And my reading of that's a bit broken because the graphic, I can't, you know, I have to read part of it and then read part of it. So, and whether I have a light on or not, I'm not showing up. So I don't know what's going on, but you're just going to have to realize I got some candles and stuff that will show up in the actual ritual that I can't show beforehand for some reason.
Right. Yeah, it must be the time of the day. The lighting is not hitting there very
Well, I get
well.
full sun. It's just recent months for some reason because we've anyways, we shouldn't waste much time on the program talking about how I can the lighting's wrong and I'm not showing up. But the
Sorry.
so the muse per se in the sinister fiction of the Drakon Covenant kind of fits into the Persephone, Princess of Cups categories, you could say. Although that's not entirely the archetype that's being sought after, that's close enough. And okay, so any thoughts about that part of the seasonal or the seasonal in general?
Not not that part in particular. I like later on, I would like to bring up some energetic things, findings, I guess you could say, that I'd actually saw these 2 or 3 months ago, I want to say, that was very interesting in what I read last night. And then just to put that together, from 3 months ago, that was pretty, yeah, that was pretty nice. I was excited about it.
Now, one of the things about the Drakon Covenant, they definitely recommend Codex Aristarchus. I'm not sure which individual that is named after, whether the person in the Bible or some other Greek figure. But it's of course branched off the Order of Nine Angles, and therefore there's a strong recommendation to read everything that you can that's Order of Nine Angles. Naos, Ostia, Fenrir. I think they mean the 9 volumes, but I guess there's some more recent volumes. And there was a false seller online that was charging like $9 a piece for them, and I was one of the ones tricked, but I think they bounced out and try to sell them, but I'm not sure if they actually have them. They have a picture, Ira and Exeat are things, and basic meditation practices should be learned. The death breath, the unwavering eye, dead stillness, and opening the blood centers. We have the basic ones going down. Tuck per debug, but outside you have og. I mean, so in Terra and going above you have Shma. So going down we have the tarot cards of the Fool, the Hanged Man, the Judgment or the Aeon. You have the Universe or the World. You have the Wheel of Fortune. You have the Tower. You have the Sun. You have the Empress, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Devil, the the unseen darkening, I guess, would be how you would divide when you divide the ein into ra and ein. You'd probably end up with that, and then you have the glottal stop, the not the but the I'm not sure if it's technically a sound because it's really just, you're obviously making it stop. And so that's a crater, and so that's the void. So you have sort of a dance of the seven veils, but you have some other stuff going on there. And you need to distinguish the type of phenomenon that happened in the meditation, whether it's with a dark mirror or projecting and emphatic practices. You certainly want to involve yourself in groups that you don't believe in and kind of use that as an operating platform. And so when you look online of what's posted about the Drakon Covenant, you do see their involvement in some things that what they call on the news far right, which isn't actually far right, is actually left. But you have people, involving themselves even in, well, I mean, see, but you got to be careful not to involve your, the point is not, you don't want to be caught up in crime just to be caught up in crime, because then you're just accepting the mundane judgment and being how they want you to be. Either you're with them or you're off to that other side. But you do see people take on roles that are obviously not the sort of thing that they believe in, and that's sort of but for safety, isn't that one of the things too? You don't want to shout from the rooftops that you're this all the time anyways. So as far as the yellow verses, we have might as well start with Revelation. So 17, 3-6. And he carried away me to a wilderness in the spirit, and I saw a woman sitting upon a beast scarlet, full of names of blasphemy, having heads 7 and horns 10, and the woman clothed in purple and scarlet, and gilded with gold and stone and precious and pearls, and having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and uncleanliness of her fornication, and upon her head a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, unto her the harlots, the abomination of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. And I wondered, having seen with her with wonder great. And some people, they find a particularly energetic church, or they find a church that's particularly not energetic, and they go there and they consider that as a place to feed. But of course, as most of what we have about vampire myths kind of started with the Babylonians. It didn't start, people talk about it starting with the Slavic people, and that could be true, but in a historical reference sense, we could say it started with the Babylonians. And the vampire, of course, is used as a reference to evil in the sense of breaking boundaries, not necessarily the common definition of things. 16:6 in Revelations, because the blood of the saints and the prophets they poured out with the blood thou didst give to drink, worthy for they are. And so, okay, they're worthy to consume of those things, or worth, well, I mean, without looking into the context, because again, I'm not promoting Christian belief with this, so that's obviously not my point. But we're worthy to reference the things. We can reference things for a sense of power, and that's why I picked the various verses. You do have some vampiric elements in reference to some of the incarnation ideas and the Bhagavatam and some other sources like that, that some entities they attack and they feed off the blood. This emotional, sensual connection to to what's claimed to be the past, that can be something that we can feed off of. So that can be the reference that we're talking about. And of course, we're worthy to do what we can do, right? We're not falling into the Christian myth of there being, or the Jewish myth of there being certain worthiness. If you're capable of doing something, you're worthy to do it. A lot of us that stepped away from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it wasn't that, oh, we were just horrible people and that's why. No, it's like our worthiness being like, oh, you've been a member of the church for 50 years and you've done all these service projects and stuff like this. Now you can finally be exposed to the full mysteries of the church. It's like, well, it's actually just open to those who are capable. I mean, the real spiritual mysteries are open in that respect. So the energy work that a person can do, and of course, one of the things that I can be saying with this is I'm not speaking officially as Drakon Covenant or various other groups. I'm just referencing them and working my own myth here. And 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, watch, because the adversary, your devil, is as a lion roaring, going about, seeking whom he may swallow up. And again, that's another sense of vampirism. You do think about the lion as a vampire in some of those African and Asian myths, is that the lion specifically will use the blood. Are the blood specifically part of it, not just lion attacks and eats, but the vampire relates to the term of attack. So if you're not in charge of your consciousness, then something else can direct. And as one saw in what's listed there, the possession. So I'm going to use some stones. And as usual, there'll be a direction towards it. And possession is a loaded term because, as I said, connected to this verse, not quite explicit in this verse, but you know what I mean. There's this idea that possession is consensual. So this idea that you could it just depends on what you believe and all that other stuff. Or you get the right alliances. No, you have to give some sort of permission by behaviors that can make you vulnerable or something else.
Right.
And so you give yourself up totally. And one of the things about the reference of blood is that extreme moment or something, or or extreme behavior or something that draws the attention of the entities. That the entities will involve themselves because of the intensity of what's, they've been, okay. Romans, is it 13? It might be 13, 9 to 19. That I'm referencing. Okay, I guess we're talking about violations in Romans 13 because I'm seeing 23 on my chart, and that doesn't. There is no Romans 23, so that can't be it. So 13 talks about, for not thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not lust. And if any other commandment in this word is summed up in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love to the neighbor, evil does not work. Fullness thereof is of the law. Love also this, knowing that the time, well, love is actually good manners is probably a better way to translate that. Also, this knowing that the time, that the hour we already out of sleep should be roused for now nearer, and all of us to salvation than we believed. The night is advanced, and the day has drawn near, and we should cast off, therefore, the works of darkness, and should put on the armor of light, as in the day becomingly we should walk, not in revels and drinking, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and exaltation, but put on the Lord. Actually, the thing about that confuses people a lot is Lord is a bit more open in that. Spiritual master could be what's meant, but of course, Paul was a Christian, or at least he's put forward as a Christian. Jesus Christ and the flesh for thought, not do we take for desire. The Noctulian mode is you're sort of beyond the flesh. The flesh is a tool, because eventually you want to translate, and that's one of the things that that Codus Artaxerxes kind of points out that's different than a lot of vampire books, because it actually talks about the transference of the. It's not just a book about feeding or something. It's a book that talks about the transference to the afterlife, the transference in terms of continuing yourself in a way in this life, and acting beyond the flesh or the thing, but the definitely taking part in the modes of the flesh is definitely part of things. Because lust, I mean, how do you exist without one's desires? But one's desires as a Noctulian, your emotions and your sensations aren't the thing. So that's not the only thing you're going to be operating upon. And we have Acts 15. 27 to 29. We have sons, therefore, Judas and Silias, also themselves by word telling you the same things. For it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us no further to lay upon you the burden than these necessary things, to abstain from things sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and for what is strangled, and from fornication, and for what keeping yourselves will we do farewell. So again, that's another set of things that talks about how they don't want to involve themselves in blood. But I mean, there's certain health risk involved in like consuming blood and all that stuff, or exposing yourself to the blood of other people and all that. But
definitely.
You can think and connect to your own blood energy and the blood energy of the events going around you and that sort of stuff too. Because we talk about the flailing and the connection to the spirit, and that's more or less the end of that. Let me look again. And so one of the references now, the thing online is, I don't think it's some mythical beast. I think it's a blurry picture of some fat dog, but the thing is that, you know, in the WordPress is that there's specific areas where certain entities are. There are certain guises that an individual can take on. And that's, of course, that's bounced off the insight roll aspect. And one of the things is that using the energy to against the whole movements that are, of course, ultra left, and by ultra left I mean the greater control of government and all that other stuff too. take away a person's individuality. And they call them, some of them are alt-right or far-right or something like that, when that's not really appropriate, because they want to create this false dichotomy. I mean, they fight amongst themselves, but you know what I mean.
Right.
And there's certain traditional things like stepping away from yourself, stepping away from society, and that's what getting yourself into a society that you don't believe in, to direct its energies, to undermine it, to do whatever you're going to do with that, does. And also the aspect, like when things go down, which might go down sooner than people will tend to think, when these things come about, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is, you know, it's going to be best to keep to yourself. It's going to be best to keep certain aspects of your identity as like a private inward thing. They may literally drag you off to church when society breaks down, that you're going to have, you know, that sort of thing. So you can have your own honesty, that you internally compose these things. And you can definitely say stuff given the opportunity in these groups that will have effects on these groups. And it's important, particularly since, you know, it's not really the thing that people say, order of nine angle. It's like, okay, fine, if there's errors and contradictions in the documents, it's not like it's exactly a, you know, almost none of the materials ever claim to be channeled per se. It's not directly that thing, but it's you know, there's a lot in general, an attempt to be authentic about compiling the tradition that a person can work in, and using a language of not only term jargon and stuff like this, but developing the faculties and understanding the method or the philosophy behind these things, not just, you know, and of course we see to iterate, we see on the screen the Drakon Covenant seal, and I color coded a version, of course, and I also rendered the seal of the Moraine, or Morena, if you're going to give it the female term. So the master or leader, and I guess you have the scythes to flay, and you have it makes me think of teeth, but you know, so that's a couple important symbols to have present in one's operation. And to re-go over here, the chant, the vampirism chant I have in Lizuvama, which I will also be employing along with the seasonal chant that we started with. Uru lil al roar maz hal lal ili ala gumkazam sirhi evesum husbandum vug vazu gavops civil ozirah zihlau azalksfi numbanazet volsum agum luchel ovum mabz zahzamaz hazikvumgub gus vahpaz vabi zod ovum. So the sixfold transfer of the honey of the sun and the moon has had an orange, black, purple, violet, blue, green, red, white, and yellow. The mysteries of the heavens are claimed for my own, to separate with the companions, familiars who distinguish themselves in mastery of union with demons and are the energy of the infernal and death energy to feed on now enemies, is from the very center to the external. The rhetoric is internalized upon the borders. The leader's manipulation is by interplay. There is violence in the spoiling manipulation of the perception. A psychic attack is on the umbral, chthonic, milk, shape-shifting, desire perceived. The binding are the conditional, the cerebral fluid, the blood, the connecting, the sexual fluid, and the emotional or psychiatric. And there's some ambiguity in the meaning of all this, but any thoughts? And there was something that you mentioned that you were going to share this time around.
Yes. It was actually, well, I began it a few seasonals back. And that was when I was seeing, well, I'll just show my little, this is a diagram I drew. That, the earth, there was the three realms, and on each, oh, I hope that shows up, but it may not. There it is. That on each layer of in between each realm, there is a square, like a block of energy. And beyond that would be source. And I was up studying late last night, and I thought that perhaps they're not little energy blocks per se, but perhaps they're little gateways, little hidden pathways. I'm not sure. I can't say that.
Well, the one thing that you mentioned, there's the tree of weird, and everything connects to everything else. So you end up with 21 paths. So, but some of them are considered as hidden paths because everything connecting to the sun, but the three bottom connect to the three top. So the pathways in between those are, as they're like the hidden six path. They're they're the hidden pathways.
Mm-hmm.
So what would that make for hold on, let me,
Like towards the direction of Jupiter.
but you would think maybe that just like the well, very specifically, I would say Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, in my experience, have like a secret gate with them, which I shared in reference to a couple seasonals, and I returned and I had somewhat of the same thing. So when we go from Moon to Saturn, would that be a Xanagan would be a secret pathway, and that would be the K. So that's one of the ones that we've gone over. Okay. And Mercury to Jupiter would be Litigon. And okay, that's not one of the letter. Neither the L or the TH is a letter that we're going over. So so that wasn't specifically chosen. And we have Venus to Jupiter. McTauron, well, that would be the G, the letter G. So the high priestess is one of the ones that we were going over. And so I guess those would be the hidden paths. I may be wrong.
Could be. Could be.
Um,
It's very interesting. I was very excited about these things last night. I didn't get very much sleep. I was just so excited, and I did a little bit more studying, and yeah.
yeah, one definitely should use one's opportunity when one has it.
Yeah.
And the temple of Azagthoth was one of those ones that they kind of the was a temple of blood influence. They kind of broke up like 20 years ago, I think, something like that. So they were going on at the same time, but some stuff kind of passed over from there. And in the Drakon Covenant, you have the same thing. But you have the reference to the box. So the coffin specifically, and it doesn't have to be weird shaped. You notice how the coffins kind of shape themselves, kind of like those Egyptian statues, rather than square and stuff like this. When it's particularly mythic, there's a reason for that. But definitely the human is directed towards being something more than human. And there's the new life and all that stuff that happens with it. The tendril is just a more modern way of saying it, because people are like, oh, Cthulhu and all, they think that I just don't resonate too well with the calling it a tendril, because yes, things connect. It's an astral cord doesn't quite work, because then you think like a rope or something, and it definitely doesn't make you think of the other too much.
Yeah. I never did like the thought of the tendrils or.
Now, we do find some stuff is said, sometimes not. Some stuff comes from dreams. Like I had an experience that was like the Goetia sigils, and it was a version of those, and it's like they were living beings and stuff like this. So what the origin of some of the symbols are, it's hard to tell. Some come in dreams and spiritual practices. Some are composed based on their meanings. The sigil of the Morena represents being kind of like a, it's kind of like a, it's what's the word? It's kind of like the letter M, and it relates to the flaying practice, the astral flaying and stuff like this. It kind of makes you think of that. Just like this, the Drakon Covenant seal kind of makes you think of a shield. So the idea of Vlad and a coat of armor and all that sort of stuff can relate to that. It kind of reminds you of a pentagram